Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Kevin and I'm a miniaturist living in New England, and this is Minis by Kev. Get it? Because Kev is a miniature version of Kevin. Yeah, that's the joke I've been going with this whole time. In this week's video, I needed to do something quick because I'm incredibly busy at work. In fact, this video is probably going to end up going up a couple days late because work's just really hectic, my day job. So I need to do something quick. I made a mistake. I've already made the miniature, so we'll talk more about it in the video and the voiceover at the end, but I picked something that I thought was going to be easy to make, and I was very wrong. I wanted to make a clock originally that was going to go on the bookshelf I made last week, but then I decided, what if I tried a grandfather clock? They're very intricate, I knew that, but I thought I could still try. And it was a struggle, and I don't know why I thought this would be a quick thing to make and an easy thing to make. So I don't know. We're gonna go ahead and jump straight into the voiceover, and then we'll talk afterwards about how I feel about everything. But it was a wild ride this week, and I don't want to spoil anything, although my thumbnail probably already has. Let's just get into it and we'll talk about it at the end. This video started off the same way as all my other videos do, and that's by getting out my sketching notebook where I sketch all my miniatures before I make them. I found a grandfather clock that had the little cabinet part closed in because I thought doing like the dangly chains would be too much work this week because of how busy I was. I wanted to do something a little bit more simple, and I found this one that I wanted to try and recreate. I've discussed this before, and you probably wouldn't know it by all my recent videos being 24 scale, but I primarily work in 1/12 scale. I find the math a little bit easier for me, and I just like the scale a little bit better. It's just easier. It's just easier all around, and I like my creations in 12 scale better. But because I was doing this in 24th scale, I had to figure out a way to do the math. And I did find like this online calculator that will do it for you, which I put in the description below. I use this one every time I need to convert something in like a weird measurement when it's like really small in 12th scale, or when I'm doing a 24th scale one. And I just find it really handy. So I wanted to link it below in case anyone wants to use it. Totally recommend. It's really great. So after I got the measurements, I went ahead and drew out like a little box of this rough size that this clock was going to be. And then I started drawing in some details that I wanted to put on it and have it look like. Does that make sense? How I wanted it to look. That's what I meant. Here's the rough sketch of what I came up with at the end that I wanted it to look like. Does it look like this? You'll have to wait and see. But this is what I wanted it to vaguely look like. And this is the paper that I made last week, which is just double cardstock glued together. A little wavy, but it works. I drew out the measurements that I needed for the box shape, which is like just the basic form of the clock. So I have the two front and back and then all the sides to make it a box. So I had that, and then I cut them out. But I quickly realized that I need them to be like indented a little bit, so that way you can see like the top and bottom part of the clock. So I drew out just a little bit. I think it's 2/8. Nope, 1/16 of an inch. I don't know. The system that we use for measurements is so confusing sometimes, but I measured in a little bit on the ruler on both sides, so I knew where to cut the little shape, and then I drew an arrow so I knew which side was up for each piece. I took my X-Acto knife and I cut out these little tiny shapes to make the different shape of top, bottom, everything. You know what I'm trying to say, right? I needed to make the little curvy, indented piece. It was around this time, off camera, that I decided that the thing was looking too boxy, and so I decided to round the top of it, which was not a good look. It looks like one of those old-timey radios that would sit on like your counter, and it was rounded on top. My grandmother used to have one. And yeah, I just don't like it. I don't like what I'm doing here. I don't like what I did. I'm upset with myself that I thought this was a good idea, but I thought that it would add a little bit more visual interest to the piece, and I was very wrong, and I regret it to this day. But I decided to make it in 3 different pieces, and then I would glue it back together. So I cut off the intricate work I did and made a bunch of little pieces to make it more difficult for myself. I started to glue it together before I realized that I needed to cut some indentations to make it have more detail. So parts of it would look like it was like a door with paneling, if that makes sense. You'll see it in a minute. And then also the top piece, I needed to cut out the front where the actual clock face would be. But I assembled the bottom and the middle piece to be kind of boxes that I could just glue back together. Here's what I meant earlier when I said I needed to do like a little indent to make it look like a door panel, the little trimming that you see on these kinds of things. And then here's the bottom and how I planned on putting it together. I didn't do the rounded bottom because I just thought it would look strange, which, you know, the whole thing looks strange at this point. So here I am showing all the 3 different pieces and how they'll look once I glue them back together. Here I am once again just showing you what it looks like once the middle and the bottom are glued together, and then I show you the top, which is where the little clock face is going to go. I wanted to try mimicking what wood texture would look like in 24th scale, and so I decided to put down a base layer of this darkish brown paint. I didn't do this very well. I kind of was winging it, I guess, and just hoping in the end it would look like wood. I looked at some pictures and I really was trying to recreate it, but there's just certain things as a miniaturist that I'm still not very good at, that I'm still learning, and this was one of them, that I'm just not good at making faux wood texture on paper. There are some people who do it really, really, really well and really convincingly, and I'm just not at that point in like my skills as an artist in this form to do that. So I tried my hardest, and you know, sometimes not everything's a win, and this was not one of those wins. I don't think it looks horrible, the color, but I don't think it looks like wood. And if it does, it looks more like a fake pressed board shiny wood that you see at like IKEA. Not that this looks like IKEA. IKEA furniture looks better than this does. I cut a little plastic square out from some packaging so I could use it as fake glass in the clock part of the grandfather clock, which you can see me putting in here, which I always love. I think that plastic packaging makes a really good faux glass in miniature, as long as it's not too large. When little things like this, it works pretty well. I found a clock face that I liked on Google, and so I printed out a few different sizes. Even though I measured what size the hole was for the clock face, I wasn't entirely sure what the right size was, because again, this measuring system that we use is kind of, you know, it's whatever works, I guess. That's really how this system was made up. After the clock face was installed, I just kind of warped some paper around a pencil so that way I could get the curvature I needed for the top piece, and I glued that on. And I just wanted to show it off because it kind of reminds me of like an old school pilgrim illustration where you see them wearing the hats. I don't know why, I felt like the clock was suddenly wearing a hat. And honestly, if I had stopped here and painted that brown, this could have been a shelf clock and it would have worked still. But alas, I did not. So I painted the little hat brown, I dabbed on some glue, and I finally reconnected all three pieces of the grandfather clock together. At this point, I decided I needed to do some dry brushing because the wood kind of texture I tried doing wasn't showing at all, so I thought that I could put a lighter color on top to try and mimic the wood texture. Again, it doesn't really work, but it does, I was gonna say bring out some of the features, but really it just kind of highlights the problems that I had with this, and it highlights the imperfections more than the details, which is unfortunate, but you live and you learn. After that, I was really not liking the shape of how it was looking, so I got out some of my fancy toothpicks, glued the ends together, and glued these to the side, hoping that it would give it a little bit more detail, a little bit more intricateness. I even glued on a little fake handle, and I overall was still not really liking it. The thing is, this has happened to me before, where I don't like a project when I'm in the middle of it, and I always hear trust the process, so I was trying to do that. I was trying to just hope that this would come together in the end, and that my feelings about this would come together, and I would like it in the end. So here I am painting the sides. At this point, I still had hope. I was still trusting the process that I would end up liking it in the end. After they had the flat coat of paint, I went back to the dry brushing, tried to tie in the new additions on the side. I was trusting the process. I was really hoping it was coming together. It was not, but I was hoping. And then I thought it was done. I thought it was time to do the little music montage overlay thing. But no, wait, we're not done. I'm going to do something more. There wasn't enough on this thing for me. I just thought it looked way too plain, and so I figured I could do some gold accents. I have this really fine tip marker pen that I thought would work great, and I thought I could just add a little bit of gold detail. I thought that maybe it would bring it to that next level. It would really tie it all together in the end. What I did not account for was that this paint pen, while very thin, immediately started to bleed and spread out. It just did not stay in that fine line because this is a paint pen. It immediately started running. I don't know if because this is paper maybe, but like it has paint on top of it, so I don't think it's that. But the lines, while thin on the paper, like the Post-it note I was testing on, immediately started running on this thing. But I'd already started, and I was going to follow through, and I was going to try and do it. And I really thought that in the end this would tie it together. And instead, it looks like a blown out image, or like a blown out tattoo or something, that the colors just did not stay. These were supposed to be thin lines, thin accent, gold, fun, antique-y, bringing it to the next level, and instead it looks like a kid did it, and it looks blown out, and it looks not good. And all I can say is that we learn from our mistakes, and not every miniature is going to be great. So I learned gold paint pens like this, while fine thin tipped, don't always stay that way. So be careful. But please, if this is your first video of mine you're watching, go watch some other ones. I promise you my miniatures are not normally this bad. This is an outlier, I believe. I really do believe this is probably one of the worst miniatures I've ever made. And I'm not trying to be harsh on myself. I'm just trying to be realistic that I do think my skills as a miniaturist are getting better over time. The longer I do this, the more I do it. However, we'll still have slip-ups. This video I thought about scrapping many times and just not even showing anyone, not showing this the light of day. But I really think that it's important to show that like everything's not always perfect. And sometimes we'll make things that we don't love. And that's fine. It'll go in a drawer somewhere and I'll never look at it again. You'll have to bear with me while we do the little musical overlay so you can see what it looks like and hear from me again in the outro. I apologize. So that's that. And I don't really like it at all. But as I said in my voiceover, I think it's important to show the things that you struggle with as well, because if you're only showing all the good things, all the miniatures you're making that you really like, I feel like people that may be watching this may think that things always go right, and they don't. Sometimes they go very badly. And is it the worst thing ever? No, but is it nice? That's subjective, I guess. I just wanted to be real, and I wanted to show you that not all my miniatures end up turning out. I do like the gold reflectiveness on it, and I think that this actually, thickness-wise, would look much better on a 1/12 scale grandfather clock, which now, like, I haven't given up on the grandfather clock thing. I still want to try it again, but I think in the future I will do a 12 scale because I'm more familiar with that. I haven't made much 24 scale stuff, and this is why. It is very difficult. You have to be very intricate, and you have to size down things, and I'm not good at that. I don't know. I just want to show you that not everything turns out how you want it to turn out, and that's okay. You keep trying. Move on to the next miniature. It is what it is. That's it for this week. Again, I apologize for the video being late. This has just been a very busy work week for me, and I'm hoping things will slow down this next week so that way I can spend more time on a miniature and really get into the nitty-gritty. I want to try a 12 scale grandfather clock. That's not happening next week. I need to step away from the grandfather clock idea, at least for a few weeks, before I come back to it to try again. Maybe in the future. I think I could do it in 12 scale. Better, at least. Better than that, for sure. So I don't know what my next video is going to be, but even if I did, I probably wouldn't spoil it for you. So anyway, if you like me, or you like miniatures, make sure you hit the subscribe button below, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!